Hello guys, how's it going? Screwzilla here, I hope you're all well. Forgive me if I'm a little bit iffy today. I had a bit of an accident and have given myself a concussion. I blacked out today when I was getting ready for work and woke up on the floor covered in blood, in a massive pool of blood as well as I split my head open from a fall. I'm all okay though, just a bit shaken and a little bit concussed. So today I'm doing a quick video on the Matilda, the Queen of the Desert, the slow-moving, heavily armoured Tier 2 British tank. The Matilda is 3.0, and for its tier it's actually one of the best tanks at 3.0, simply because it's got so much armour. If you have a look at this thing, you've got almost 100mm of armour around the front at some points. Generally around about 75mm sort of effective armour in most places. Well, 75mm, but effective armour of almost 100mm in most spots. Very heavily armoured vehicle. Nothing at this tier can penetrate your turret, pretty much. This was true in real life as well. In the North African campaign, the Matilda was sort of known as the Queen of the Desert, simply because it just could withstand ridiculous amounts of barrages to it. It had the most armor at the time. The front glacis here had an effective armor rating, had, you know, sort of 70mm of armor. You know, you got sort of almost an effective armor rating of around about 70mm, 90mm to 100mm in some places. It's very hard to penetrate this thing from the front. Your best spots are these two weak points here, either side of the driver, and to the left of the driver you're going to hit the ammo. But they're very hard to hit, and generally the Matilda will be side scraping, sort of at this angle. So when you fire at these points, you're going to have to penetrate almost 80mm of armor. If you penetrate here, you're generally going to go straight through, you're not going to cause too much damage. This thing is ridiculously well armored though. And the other thing is the side armor. Now, while most tanks have very light side armor, even things like the Panther, which carry 50mm of armor in the late war, late models of the Sherman, which had 40mm of armor, the Matilda had around 70mm of armor. Now you're saying, well, no, that's 25mm. Now this is the outside section of the tracks. So this tank has got dual skin armor. So it's got the armor here, then it's also got a plate on the inside. So just here, 40mm thick. Combined with this outside, you've got 65mm. So, and then there's a little bit of extra in there as well, so it has around about 70mm of effective armor. You're sort of, it's very hard to penetrate this thing at this tier, because most tanks don't have that much penetration over that distance. It's also very trolly because it bounces a lot of shots as well. It's got some very good angled pieces to it. It's a very well designed tank, but the weight of the armor does come at a cost, and that's top speed. With the tank weighing almost 28 tons, and let's look at this engine, 179 horsepower. It's slow. This tank is an infantry tank. It's designed to go ahead of infantry while they walk behind it. It's not designed for speed. In the desert, it used to have problems going over rough terrain, of course, because, you know, the sand would cause it to go even slower. It had a maximum speed across most of Africa around 6 miles per hour, which is just ridiculous. So this thing was ridiculously slow, and that's its biggest weakness, is the speed and maneuverability of this tank. The big benefit of the tank, though, is the gun, the ammo, and the armor, really. So it carries the 2-pounder gun, which is a really good little gun. And also the armour it has is you have the choice between the heavy duty Mark 1 armour piercing, which has ridiculous penetration, 80mm at 10 meters. You know, you've got almost 80mm at 100 meters. You also have the choice of the armour piercing capped ballistic shell, ballistic cap shell, which has a higher fragmentation rate, slightly less penetration, but it does do more damage. So it's your choice really. Both work very well. I generally use the Mark 1 armor piercing cap, just because I find it works a little bit better, and I have a better game with it generally. Also, it has a higher muzzle velocity. That's the same muzzle velocity, actually, the same speed. But I tend to find that I like that round a little bit more. So here I am in a game. So we are up against the Germans and the Japanese, and we're at the right tier. Now, when you're in the correct tier with this tank, when you're not up tiered, this tank is amazing. When you're up tiered, this tank is the worst. You just want to die when you're in it, because it is terrible. When you're going up against things like the Panzer 2s, 3s, and even 4s, it's fine. This tank was designed and was effective against those tanks. When you're going up against later models of the Panzer, you tend to struggle, because they have such high penetration guns, they will just rip through you. So here we are charging towards A. Bad idea, out in the open, but we're in a Matilda, we can survive this, I'm sure. Hopefully. So the Matilda, this is the Mark II. There was actually a prior version of the Matilda, which was a very sort of light tank. It's a very weird looking tank. It sort of has the tracks on the outside. It looks like it's sort of almost two tanks glued together. It's a bit of a strange one, but it never caught on. So the Matilda Mark II became known as the Matilda. It's the only tank in the British arsenal that was used through the whole of the Second World War. No other tank was used through the whole war in the British arsenal, so it has that distinction. It also had a lot of variants as well. The Matilda was a very versatile tank, and it was also a tank used by the Russians. There we go, we take a shot from the Panzer 38 there. Hit his turret. Another Panzer 38 there, just going across, set him on fire, get another shot there, bounce it off the turret. Try and take that guy out quickly. There we go. Now get hit by that guy sort of through the front, he actually penetrates, but all our crew are alive still. The round, we took enough off the round to basically survive it. Finally gets a penetration on us that causes some proper damage and kills one of our crewmen. I think he took out my loader. Or my commander, I can't remember which one it was now. But it took a lot to penetrate, especially the turret, because it is just so trolly on its armour. One of the issues with the Matilda was the skirts on it, which often clogged and caused problems. The Russians didn't particularly like it because of that. It was comparable to the KV-1 for the Russians, but it didn't have the firepower. But they did use them up until 1944. And they also redesigned a few little bits. The Germans also used Matildas, Following Operation Battle Axe, a dozen Matildas left behind the Axis lines were repaired and put into service by the Germans. The Germans' designation was the Inter Terrier Panzerkampfwagen Mark II 784E, translating as infantry tank Mark II number 748 English. The Matilda was actually well regarded by the Germans, although their use by the Germans caused a lot of confusion despite the prominent German painting on them. So yeah, so it was quite an interesting little part of history there. So the Matilda we have in game, I think, has the Vickers machine gun. There was also the 2A, which had the BSEA machine gun, which was the Matilda the Matilda 2 Mark II. I can't remember which one we got in game. It's basically a slightly better machine gun. They also had a upgraded version with a higher powered diesel engine in it, which helped significantly. It increased its acceleration a fair bit. They improved turrets, improved engines over the years, improved gearboxes. They also had sort of versions with a mine flail on it. It was never used operationally, that one, but it was a sort of experimental one. Generally, the only tanks to use mine flails, I think, were the Churchill and the Sherman in the end. Those were the two main ones that got put into use with mine flayers in them. So this game's going okay for us. We've had 2 assists and 1 kill. The tank's taken a fair bit of damage, but we've capped a zone as well, and our team's advancing on the enemy. So we've really pushed well in this game. It shows the strength of the Matilda. Although you're not fast, you can just take that punishment from the enemy. There was also a Matilda designed for sort of defense against troops. Get a hit with our cannon on this guy as he comes flying into us. Get a second hit and take him out. Matilda, the best AAA in the game, somehow. Somehow I killed a plane with a Matilda. I think that's worthy of a pat on the back. So there was also a one of the Russian variants had a 76mm Zis gun put into it. It was an attempt to outgun it, sort of make it similar to the T-34s. However, it was not too practical because of the small size of the Matilda's turret, so it didn't really go into main production. There was a Matilda with a 6-pounder in it, and a A27 turret. I think it was the Black Prince. Oh no, that Black Prince was something a little bit different, but it's similar to the Cromwell turret, basically. So that was the Matilda with A27, and then there was a Black Prince, which was a radio-controlled prototype. It was sort of designed to be used as a mobile target for drawing fire and to reveal hidden anti-tank guns, or also for demolition missions. There was a planned order for 60, but they were cancelled. So it ended up being just a normal tank, but with a 6-pounder gun instead. So it was a little bit different there. Now, Australia had some interesting variants of this as well. There was the Matilda Frog, which was a flamethrower variant. Also the Murray and Murray FT, which were also flamethrower tanks, the Matilda Bulldozer, and also the Matilda Hedgehog, which was a bit different. This was a interesting tank. It had 7-chambered mortar, basically. So it was like a moving mortar vehicle. It had it on an armoured box on the rear of the hull. 7 of these were made. The projector was elevated by hydraulics, and it electrically fired individually or in salvos from sort of a 12 o'clock position. The 5th tube could not be fired until the turret was actually traversed slightly to move the radio antenna, because otherwise it would hit that. Each of the mortars weighed 65 pounds and contained around 30 to 35 pounds of explosives, and the range was up to 400 meters. Aiming it was accomplished by pointing the entire tank towards the object you wanted to fire at, so accuracy was not spectacular but adequate enough for the task. It was actually pronounced quite successful. The project would have been impressive against enemy bunkers, but the war ended before it was used operationally, but still a really cool variant. 70 Matildas still survive today. Most of them are actually here in Australia. We have about 30 of them here, including the hedgehogs, the frog, the bulldozer, and a fair few Type 2s. The Bollington Tank Museum also has a running Matilda, and then there's a lot of private owners as well. So it's sort of still quite a common tank to see. It didn't die out very well. It didn't get completely destroyed like some tank variants. There were still quite a few of them remaining, which is good for the people because we still get to see them. All in all, it's a good tank in some ways, but in others it's terrible. If you're at the right BR, this tank is fantastic because barely anything can penetrate you, as you saw in that video. I got penetrated twice, I think, and the first one was likely through the driver's hatch, or sort of this area, sort of here, because I was slightly sloped. Injured a few of the crew. Could possibly have been again through this little bump here, gone through this section here. Just caused light damage to the crew, who aren't particularly, but they're not sort of fully trained in vitality, so you know that hit didn't kill anyone. Second one just killed the aimer, so I think killed the aimer or the gunner or the loader, sorry. So yeah, it wasn't really much issue there. Very rare to get a plane kill in this thing, so I was pretty happy with that. But all in all, for the rank, this tank can be quite good. You are probably better off taking out the Crusader. It is a very fast tank, and it also has a better gun on it as well, a bigger gun, the 6-pounder, 57mm. The Valentine is also really good for the BR. Not quite as armoured, but the sloping on it does give some trolley armouring as well, so it's pretty well armoured for the BR. From the front at least. From the side it's not nearly as much as the Matilda, but the speed completely annihilates the Matilda. It's a much faster tank. But if you want something that's quite fun to play now and again, something that you can have some fun in and cause a fair bit of havoc to the enemy in, then the Matilda is definitely the tank for you. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a good day, and I will catch you again soon. This is Screezilla out. I'll catch you all again shortly. Thanks, bye bye.